President Donald Trump is making good on one of his campaign promises, and that was to eliminate the Department of Education.
In this video, Ana Kasparian and Cenk Uygur of the Young Turks report on Donald Trump's decision to abolish the Department of Education. Cenk Uygur then gives all of the reasons he disagrees with the move, while Ana Kasparian says that she understands why American would be in support of the decision. With that, let's watch Ana Kasparian and Cenk Uygur see their ideologies continue to drift apart.
Well, the Education Department is in the Trump administration's crosshairs. Let's get into it.
President Trump finalizing plans to gut the Department of Education. Sources tell ABC News the president now weighing an executive order to direct his education secretary to submit a proposal to dismantle the agency and call on Congress to eliminate it.
To my friends who are upset, I would say with respect, call somebody who cares. They better get used to this. It's USAID today. It's going to be Department of Education.
President Donald Trump is making good on one of his campaign promises, and that was to eliminate the Department of Education. Now, Politico reports that he intends to do so through an executive order. Obviously, there are going to be some obstacles in accomplishing this through an executive order, and I'll explain how in just a moment. But the EO isn't going to be signed until his education secretary nominee is confirmed. And that, of course, is Linda McMahon. So from what we know at the moment, Trump's plan to shutter the education department would come in a few different phases. So his executive order would direct the department to create a plan that would basically wind down the functions of this federal agency and its existing administrative authority. But the order was also expected to call for the agency to inventory a complex set of laws needed to delegate the department's powers to other agencies and then close the department. An acknowledgement that some of conservatives' biggest desires for change hinge on congressional approval. And this is where Trump is likely going to run into some issues with what he's trying to do here. Now, of course, DOJ is involved in this. A third anonymous source that spoke to Politico revealed that representatives from the Department of Government Efficiency were working at the Education Department headquarters on Monday of this week. They were seeking to access records at the agency. But if the Department of Government Efficiency is so worried about government waste, and there is government waste, I will concede that that's certainly true. It is a little strange, it's curious that they keep focusing on these various government agencies that receive a tiny, tiny sliver of resources from the federal government relative to what the Pentagon receives. And consider the fact that the Pentagon has failed every single audit.
If you like watching videos like this one, like and subscribe. We'd really appreciate it. Let's get back to the video.
7 audits in a row. They have failed every single one. They're now receiving close to $1 trillion a year. Okay, money allocated to the Pentagon by Congress. But take a look at this. This is the pie chart showing you where our resources went for fiscal year 2024. So the Department of Education received $229 billion. That sounds like a lot of money, but it's $229 billion of the $9.7 trillion allocated to federal agencies in 2024. Now, Senate confirmation hearings for Trump's education secretary pick, Linda McMahon, hasn't been scheduled yet. Her financial disclosures and other paperwork still need to be cleared by the Office of Government Ethics. But this effort to close the education department puts her in a pretty rough spot once those confirmation hearings happen. Common sense tells me they won't attempt to close the education department until the secretary is confirmed, said another person familiar with the discussions who was granted anonymity to address sensitive information. And look, it is worth noting that there could be a silver lining here involving, I can't believe I'm saying it, congressional Republicans, because some of them are already side-eyeing these plans, and they're not necessarily in favor of shutting down the education department. And doing so, by the way, is not as easy as signing an executive order. It's much more complex. Here's why.
I don't think we need the Department of Education. I'd be fine if it didn't exist, but I can also count to 60. And to dismantle a federal department, you need an act of Congress.
One of the Republican Party's platforms in 2024 is to rein in wasteful federal spending, but abolishing a federal agency doesn't automatically turn off the spending tap.
All the money the Department of Education has really is the money that's authorized by Congress. All of these programs will continue to exist and get money unless Congress voted to stop funding them. The debate about the future of the department is symbolic. What really matters is what we decide to do about the staffing and funding of these assorted programs.
And it looks like congressional approval might stand in the way of Trump getting what he wants here. Some conservatives concede they currently lack enough support for legislation to close the department and farm its core functions out to other federal agencies. But we have to wait and see what happens. I mean, there could be a tremendous amount of pressure on these Republicans in Congress to do what Donald Trump wants. Again, we have to wait and see. But
I don't understand who would be against cutting government waste. I mean, it seems like the only criticism Anna has is that they didn't prioritize the Pentagon. That doesn't mean that's not going to be audited as well, and I hope it is. I'm with you on that. But anywhere that waste can be cut is a good thing. Not to mention, I think people on both sides of the aisle agree that the education system in the United States is broken. And unless I'm missing something, the buck stops with the Department of Education. Kids can't read at grade level, do math at grade level. The public school system is an absolute joke. So I have no idea the inner workings of the Trump administration, but I would think that they're prioritizing the Department of Education because of all the problems we've seen with it. Besides the academic problems that I just noted, these are the schools that don't have American flags in classrooms and have Black Lives Matter flags and pride flags and teachers pushing their own agenda. And instead of teaching our kids math and English and history and science, dedicating whole semesters to topics that will not be of any service to them as they get older. I think there needs to be a real fundamental shift of how we approach teaching children in this country. So I'm all for it. And any of these congressional Republicans that oppose it, in my opinion, are just rhinos or never Trumpers whose sole goal is to impede Donald Trump at every turn. Anyway, let's get back to the video.
A lot of it is going to be determined by the reaction of the American people. My guess is they'll say, no, brother, we asked you to keep prices down. We asked you to get us out of wars. We asked you to have a very tough policy at the border. So those are, you could consider that right-wing positions, moderate, whatever you want. But that was very, very clear. We didn't ask you to get rid of the Department of Education. So, or they'll say, yeah, no, we love it. We love the cuts. We did ask you to get rid of it. So I don't know the answer. And I'm intensely curious to see what's going to happen.
So I don't know the answer either. Obviously, we're just speculating and we're predicting what could happen. But what I do know is parents are upset with the public education system, even though the public education system is impacted more on a local level, right? So there are some standardized elements to our public education system coming from the top and the education department. But in reality, when it comes to funding decisions, that's actually far more localized than the Trump administration would have you believe. So part of the messaging that I have a huge issue with coming from Trump administration officials and Trump himself is they're making it appear as though the education department focuses all of its energy on public schools, but it doesn't. Now, it does do some work with public schools. So for instance, again, public schools primarily, a state and local responsibility, but the Department of Education does serve more than 50 million students at 130,000 public and private schools. The department provides billions to aid students with disabilities and students in low-income communities. And the education department also provides financial aid for college students. So FAFSA, that's a federal thing. That's not a state or local thing, right? FAFSA is what you apply to if you need financial aid so you can actually go to college. So if you dismantle
Cenk, just because he ran on keeping prices down, securing the border, it's not like this is a surprise to anyone. He talked about this during the campaign. I agree with Anna that the public education system is impacted more at the local level. And she said, well, there's some standardized things that come from the Department of Education. Personally, I think there should be some very basic standardized things. I'm not saying government overreach, but things like ensuring kids are getting the basic education that people can agree they need, like the subjects I've already mentioned, or they won't be funded, or if schools cross lines as far as the subjects that they're teaching. and they're not appropriate for school age kids. I mean, these are very broad ideas on at top of mind for me, but I think there should be some standardization. So you're not at a disadvantage in one state just because you live there and you have to accept whatever the schools are there because you live in one state and that state happens to have poor quality schools. If there's a little more standardization, again, just with the basic expectations of what the children are being taught, parents can be comfortable that their kids are going to get similar educations, similar curriculum foundations, no matter what state they live in. And as far as talking about FAFSA and everything, Anna said, I agree with Republicans that college isn't for everyone and there should be more emphasis on trade schools for some people, but people still should have an opportunity to go to college. FAFSA, or even if it's named something else, it's not going anywhere. No one's mentioned that at all. I don't even understand why to bring this up. She's acting like this is going to deprive people from the opportunity to go to college, and I don't see how it does that at all. We have a crazy, bloated government with tons of agency, tons of unelected bureaucrats. So trust me, as far as delegating this out, we've got plenty of places to delegate the responsibilities of the Department of Education to. So until I see something different, this is very early in the process, still has to go through Congress. Secretary of Education still has to be confirmed. So, my position could change if this includes something that I'm not seeing right now. But as of right now, I'm fully on board with the move. Anyway, let's get back to the video.
Handle the education department, what government agency is going to handle college aid if a student wants to go to college? And by the way, I agree with conservatives when they argue college isn't for everyone and there should be more emphasis on trade schools for some students. I agree with you on that. So emphasize the trade schools, but also provide the opportunities for people who want to go to four-year institutions to be able to do so. If you dismantle the education department, you have to have some solid answers in regard to what is going to happen to all these different services that are provided to the American people from this department.
Yeah, and so I don't know that they're going to bother with answers. And look, we give Trump credit sometimes for doing the optics right? The Democrats never know how to make their own case. Joe Biden has been murmuring for 4 years straight. Chuck Schumer's been murmuring for about 20 years straight, et cetera, right?
It's like these two don't even know what they're complaining about. They're like, what's going to happen with a lot of these services that the Department of Education provides to the American people? And when will we get some answers? Well, you all are acknowledging this is extremely early. There's a lot of things that need to happen before any action can be taken. And Cenk said something like, well, I don't think we're going to get answers. What are you talking about? You'll get answers when they know. This is all very preliminary, but we want to hear from you. What do you all think about Trump's decision to cut the Department of Education? And do you think he'll get blocked by Congress? And what did you think about Anna and Cenk's commentary on the matter? Let us know. Anyway, as always, really appreciate you watching, and we will see you on the next one.